Hey guys! Yeah, so sorry about the lack of uploads as of late. Truth be told, I've just been spending the past couple months or so on other projects I have. I could have spent that time making a video, of course, but here's the thing. There's just not much going on in the animation world that warrants me making a full video on, either because people have already talked about it to death, or I just don't find it interesting enough. However, there is one exception. So a while back, some of you may remember that I said my favorite show that is currently in production is The Amazing Digital Circus, and for good reason. It has well-written characters, a very interesting premise, excellent humor, and important themes for viewers, just to name a few things the show did right. All this done by an indie animation company, mind you, which makes it more impressive in my opinion. Well, despite this amazing accomplishment they've done with this show, Glitch may have just topped themselves with their latest pilot, Knights of Guinevere. If you guys haven't watched the pilot yet for whatever reason, I highly recommend you guys do. It's available on YouTube like all of Glitch's shows, but let's just cut to the chase. I love this show already. Everything about what I liked about The Amazing Digital Circus and other Glitch shows like Murder Drones and The Gaslight District, Knights of Guinevere has that too. But now it's more aligned with people like me and others in my demographic. Now, that is not to say that the Digital Circus or Murder Drones doesn't appeal to me, or other people in older demographics, of course. I still like these shows a lot overall, but they do skew towards people who are a bit younger than me. Basically, people who are teenagers. They definitely appeal to an older demographic than what Disney cartoons appeal to nowadays at least. But with Knights of Guinevere, this show is undoubtedly meant for adults with its darker tone, uncensored profanity, willingness to show blood, kind of, and the main characters being adults who have a bone to pick with their as status quo. Now, if that's all you want to hear from me without getting into spoilers, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe to hear more of my thoughts on the show when it inevitably gets more episodes. But if you are someone who likes to hear why I like the show in detail, then keep watching because there's quite a lot to cover. So I will admit that the main reason why I gave Knights of Guinevere a chance was because of who was involved in the show, which is, of course, Dana Terrace, the person responsible for the Owl House. Now, some of you already know that I love the Owl House, certainly enough for me to ramble about it for as much as I did, and its impact on me and this channel cannot be understated. However, Disney dropped the ball on the Owl House by cutting it short, and the show had an ending that is not ideal, to put it lightly. I'm sure many Owl House fans will still say the finale was excellent, but personally, I know it could have been better, and it seems like Dana and the Owl House crew felt the same way. So when I heard that she and much of the former crew went on to Glitch to make this new show, they immediately got my interest. So what did Dana and her crew cook up now that they are mostly Unchained creatively? Knights of Guinevere centers around a massive floating amusement park called Park Planet, which is created by Orville Park as a gift to her daughter, Olivia Park. The park has Princess Guinevere as its mascot, and clearly she does not like it because in the first few minutes of the pilot, she jumps off of a building in what is basically a suicide attempt. Park Planet grows and expands across the planet, bringing whimsical joy and fun for people who attend the park, but lay waste and dystopia to the surface beneath it. One of the attendees who snuck into the park as kids were Andrea and Francesca, better known as Andy and Frankie. While they were there, they were lucky enough to encounter a Guinevere mascot, and it was a memory that Frankie at least cherished into her adulthood. Fast forward many years, Olivia is an old woman who wants to find Guinevere back and sends an armored robot to find her. Meanwhile, Andy and Frankie are now adults trying to work their asses off in their respective jobs in order to get by in their town of M7, which is on the surface and was severely impacted by the waste and pollution left behind by Park Planet. Andy works at the park as a low-ranking engineer, while Frankie works in manufacturing merchandise for the park, and works with Sparky, an older man and captain of a ship, to scavenge the seas for any valuable scrap worth selling. During the scavenge, Frankie discovers remnants of a Guinevere android that Sparky immediately takes to have it disassembled and sold as scrap. However, Frankie wants to fix up the android, believing she could get a good position at the park if she's able to fix it. So with the help of Andy, they manage to get the Guinevere android and the reluctant approval of Sparky to fix her up. In the third act, Andy, Frankie, and Guinevere made their way through the lower levels of the park, narrowly avoiding death from the robot Olivia sent, and they find themselves in a repair station. Guinevere is rebooted into her fantasy world and sees the younger versions of Andy and Frankie that she remembers a long time ago. At this point, the pilot ends, thus leaving us wondering what's next. So on the surface, there's a lot you can see from this pilot that makes it stand out from other Glitch production shows. For one, unlike those other shows, it's actually 2D animated. For their first 2D show, Glitch definitely pulled it off amazingly, and a huge part of that is due to Dana Terrace and the crew's experience in working in the Owl House. I mean, the art style of the pilot does vaguely remind me of the Owl House in many scenes, although it still feels very different and unique to itself. You can compare the show's animation style to a variety of cartoons, to be frank, but personally, the way I describe it is, it's basically what the Owl House could have looked like if the show had a bigger budget and more freedom to have a more expressive form of animation. The other major thing that immediately pops out to me at least are, surprisingly, the show's references and themes. I'm pretty sure everyone who watched the pilot at this point knows this story is basically satire against Disney and how corporate greed ruined the world. In the brief time skip montage during the cold open, we see how Guinevere and Park Planet went from being viewed as this magical world full of hopes and dreams to a symbol of corporatism, degrading quality of media over time, and of course, the dystopia that was created on the surface. Without a doubt, this show is a reflection of Dana Terrace's personal frustrations with Disney and the broader critique of how the company has taken over basically everything. I mean, she clearly alluded to it in her interview before the pilot premiered.
Like I come up with any story. I was pissed off one day and this became a cathartic release.
Also, if that's not obvious enough, the creator of Park Planet is a pretty clear reference to Walt Disney and Disneyland based on the character design, the design of the parks themselves, and the fact that the amusement parks are named after their surnames. Also, yes, that's how I found out that the surname of these two characters is actually Park, thus implying that they are Korean, which Dana Terrace later confirmed to be canon. Anyway, while the show's themes and the lore drew me into it like most shows I've discovered in recent years, the main thing that's actually keeping me interested are, of course, the characters. Now, since there's only one episode so far, we still don't know much about them, but I already love them, and the pilot has left interesting clues for us to speculate. It's very likely we will know more characters as the series progresses, and so far, we were introduced to 6 of them. Now, I'm not going to say much about Sparky, to be frank, because he's probably the least interesting character to me, and there's just not much to go off of him as of right now. So first, let's talk about the parks, specifically Orville Park, who is of course the founder of Park Planet, and as of right now, there's not much to say about him apart from the fact that he seems to be a very convincing form of Walt Disney satire. Given how old his daughter is, it's very likely he's dead by this point of the story, although he's definitely going to make an appearance at some form or another. Then there's Olivia Park, who at first seems like your typical rich kid brat in the cold open, but there's more to her beneath the surface. It's very likely that she's going to be a major antagonist of this story, at least almost towards the end, after clearly showing to have some major attachment issues with Guinevere, refusing to let her go. Olivia is abusing Guinevere both in a literal and figurative sense. However, some have pointed out that she may not be doing it by her own choice. Yeah, Olivia may seem like she has caring support from her father, but she may have been essentially pressured to do this. Guinevere as a mascot is most likely Olivia's creation based on how she's talking about Guinevere, probably to fill the void that her mother left behind, and her father created the park to further incentivize Olivia to pull more creative ideas out of Guinevere to create more content to sell to keep the park financially afloat. In a way, Olivia's dynamic with her is similar to what artists like Dana Terrace had to do when they had to work for Disney and other mainstream studios. When an artist creates an art piece like a show, movie, or in this case a character, a company like Disney would naturally want to capitalize on the creation. But this requires the artist to generate new stories for the character to go through, which essentially leads to the character being creatively abused, which can lead to the creation becoming unrecognizable to the original vision. What you get is different iterations of the same character, each of them becoming worse and worse as the artist tries to milk more from their creation. That may result in more profits for the company that owns the property, but quality becomes worse over time to the detriment of the consumers and the creators. With this in mind, I predict that as we learn more about Olivia, it would reveal that she is more of a tragic character who lost her mind over time trying to perfect her creation, less so being the cold-blooded villain that the beginning scenes the pilot hinted towards. Of course, when we eventually learn more about Olivia, we will learn more about Guinevere. In context of the show and the allegory it sets up, Guinevere is to Park Planet as Mickey Mouse is to Disneyland. She's the mascot of the park and the company generally, and her design even alludes to her being a metaphor to Mickey. But besides being an artist creation that eventually became a corporate mascot, what is she exactly? Guinevere is an android mascot, and despite her name being tainted over the years, she definitely seems to care about human guests at the park, at least Andy and Frankie anyway. She does this despite being sentient, and even when she is mostly beaten up, she is still willing to kick ass somehow to protect Andy and Frankie. Come to think of it, sentient AI that has a soft spot for humans has been a running trope in 3 out of the 4 recent Glitch shows. It kinda makes me wonder if there's an underlying message that connects all these shows together, but I'll save that topic for another time. Besides, unlike the sentient AI in other Glitch shows, the explanation for why Guinevere is sentient is probably more straightforward. It's simply because she's likely not a complete AI, but rather a mixture of human and machine, which is the technical definition of an android. The physical human traits go beyond just her appearance as well. We know that she has actual living organs and that she can feel physical pain. And some of these scenes hint that she has an actual organic brain. So being part human would explain why she is still kind to Andy and Frankie and why she remembers them fondly as kids, despite having changed a lot over the years. Or have they? I guess that leads me to Frankie, one of the most lovable characters created, and yet somehow kind of controversial. I'll get to that controversy in another time, but Frankie's personality is something that I kind of admire. Despite living in such a dystopian society, she somehow remained very optimistic in some degree. We bring up how Disney cartoons often have quirky, upbeat characters for their protagonists, and even though Dana Terrace made Night to Guinevere as satire on her former employer, she apparently does like this trope at least. Luz from the Owl House was a very optimistic, quirky character similar to Frankie. Although like Luz, I imagine Frankie has some sort of dark or tragic past, which isn't hard to imagine given how everyone in this world lives. Now, this isn't to say that Frankie is blocking out all the negative aspects of Parks Planet's negative impact on the world. She lives through it like Andy and everyone else. However, she still believes she can improve herself in some way by climbing her way up through the metaphorical machine that is Park Planet, despite Andy's insistence that it's not as great as she thinks. In fact, her sense of optimism is arguably so strong that it results in her hallucinating things that aren't actually there or moving. Her memory of meeting Guinevere as a kid clearly left a positive impression on her, and that gives her a bit of hope that she'll find a way to have a better, more fulfilling life. The problem for Frankie though is this sense of optimism is likely to be misguided. This aspect of Frankie's character is a major theme of the show, that being fiction is one hell of a double-edged sword. It can definitely inspire people to do amazing, incredible things that could make the world better. However, it can also make a really good distraction from the terribleness of real life. Oftentimes, fiction can make such a good distraction that people end up living in the status quo with not much motivation to completely change the system. And in some cases, it could make people believe that they are capable of more under the current system. That's the trap that Frankie unknowingly finds herself in, and I predict that as her arc progresses, she widens her view of just how ruthlessly evil and unsustainable Park Planet really is. Although the twist here is that we'll likely see the inverse happen with Andy. I guess that leads us to her, which out of all the characters is actually my favorite, but it's kinda difficult to explain why. With most cartoons, I generally like the quirky, optimistic characters as my favorite, and this show has that character trope with Frankie. Meanwhile, Andy is kind of the polar opposite. She acts pretty jaded and depressed with the things going on around her, and she appears very tired all the time because of how overworked she is. This definitely makes her very relatable to many working people like me, but her jadedness and tiredness are not what completely draws me to her. It's more of how she continues to have her goofy moments and willingness to show meaningful support to her friend despite having these traits. To me, I find that to be the most relatable part of Andy and why I like her so much. It's also key for the type of arc she will have as the series progresses. While I see Frankie go down a path towards cynicism, I think Andy will experience the opposite. She will see there is more to her world beyond just the terribleness she sees all the time. By having both arcs, the characters will come into conflict for sure, but they will likely learn to compromise towards the end and work together to complete a common goal. Oh, and the cherry on top on why I like Andy, of course, is how she's most likely canonically Filipino, at least according to her voice actor. I bring this up because for those who don't know already, but I am Filipino, and growing up, I rarely see any Filipino characters in the cartoons I watch, let alone a Filipino main character. So finally seeing one in a show that I like is a nice development. Now, granted, the show itself hasn't really alluded to Andy being of Filipino descent apart from a few visual hints in her home. Hopefully the show does dedicate a bit of time to show it more fully, although I would not be surprised if they don't, because for one, the show's core themes go beyond cultural diversity to a point where the story works, regardless of the characters' ethnic backgrounds. But more significantly, it's not even confirmed that Knights of Guinevere even takes place on Earth. The characters are humans, of course, but these humans have definitely advanced to a point where technology has allowed them to apparently terraform different planets. At least that's what Andy seems to hint towards.
Your attention's divided, man! Meanwhile, every new planet is getting terraformed, and soon there'll be no place untouched by the light of commerce and amusement-tainment. We got no choice. I got no choice.
This leads me back to the other major thing that is really important with this show, the lore and world building. For being only a pilot so far, Knights of Guinevere already has a pretty extensive world that provides a solid foundation for the story to stand on. However, it also left us quite a lot of questions for us to speculate on. Is this planet actually Earth? If not, then what happened to Earth that caused us to venture into the stars? Who is Orville Park exactly, and why did he build this amusement park in the skies? Why did Olivia create Guinevere? Is this related to why we don't see her mother? Why did Guinevere try to off herself in the first few minutes of the pilot? Speaking of parents, where are Andy and Frankie's parents? How did these two meet exactly? Also, are Andy and the rest of the people working in Park Planet dying? What is Blue Lung? What is this world that Guinevere reboots into at the end? I could go on and on with these questions, but I'm almost out of time and I'm not the best person to answer these questions anyway. Although, using Occam's razor here, we can at least find the most likely answers to many of these. Is this world actually Earth? Probably not actually. My guess is that Earth was completely ruined by the time the story begins by the same forces and mistakes humans are currently making in the show and in real life. Orville Park is simply an entrepreneur who saw his daughter's potential for creating unique characters and had the money to capitalize on her art piece. Assuming Olivia did create Guinevere, which is very likely, if not confirmed at this point, she likely did so to fill in the void her mother left behind, presumably after passing from a tragic accident or something. As far as Andy and Frankie goes, their parents are probably not really important to the story, although I could be wrong. The two probably met in school or in the park when they tried to sneak in before. Regarding the health of these characters, it is clear that Park Planet, its products and services release harmful emissions and byproducts that are severely polluting the planet it hovers above, poisoning the people who live in the park and likely the people on the surface too, thus causing this condition. Again, it definitely fits in the show's themes of corporate greed ruining everything from the entertainment we consume to the physical environment and so on. Within the context of the show's lore, we know that there is a disease spreading throughout the people in the park referred to as Blue Lung. Certainly a respiratory illness, it's a widespread issue in the world to the point that Park Planet are issuing warnings of the spread and even marketing insurance against it. Hell, there might be a chance that is what elder Olivia is suffering from, or that could be the reason why we don't see Orville Park at all in the present day. As for why Park Planet is allowing this immense amount of pollution to harm everyone, including the owners of the park themselves, regarding the show's themes, the owners just do not care about the long-term effects of the park's operation. By the time they would probably care is when they succumb to the effects. So yeah, basically another explanation that neatly fits into the corporate greed is bad mantra, but there's a reason why I'm trying to hammer that point home. Knights of Guinevere is probably the most blatantly anti-corporate, or dare I say anti-capitalist cartoon that I've seen probably ever. Even if you are not aware of the backstory behind Dana Terrace, the Owl House, and what Disney did to them, it's very easy to pick apart what the show's themes are and what it's trying to satirize. Everyone who does not live under a rock knows the struggles of living in a toxic world where your work is undervalued while the people above live lavishly. At the same time, these forces in power are destroying the world and everyone on it, including the people who are running it, thus showing how unsustainable our society is as it's currently structured. It's not the first show to have these themes, but it's the first one that I've seen that really hit the nail exactly right. Nearly everything about the show, down to the tiniest of details, it's partially inspired to be a satirized version of our real world. It's very clear that what Disney did to Dana Terrace and the Owl House and a bunch of other creators and their stories radicalized her and other creative people in the animation industry in the positive sense of the word. In an attempt to get back at her former employer, she created this show to parody Disney, not just because it makes good entertainment, but also as a warning for what could happen if we continue supporting the current system. A system where large corporations across major industries and economic sectors consolidate power and push out competitors through any means. It's the right message for the right time, which is why it seems to resonate well for me and a lot of people out there. Now, I'm not saying that the show and Glitch is going to single-handedly take down Disney. It's going to take so much more than a popular YouTube show to outcompete a multi-billion-dollar corporate empire that took over 100 years to build. But the show does make it clear to people from aspiring creators and animation fans craving for more variety of content that it is still possible to create popular, unique shows and movies passionately in spite of the structural disadvantage of being independent or non-mainstream. As for whether Glitch and other independent animation studios and creators will last for a very long time, like their mainstream counterparts, I cannot say. But as of right now, the future looks great for indie animation, and I really look forward to seeing the future of Knights of Guinevere and the creative ventures of Dana Terrace and Glitch. Frankly, I really hope they last for a very long time because there's just not much from mainstream animation that really piques my interest. Although, I'll admit, I haven't really done any active searching for new shows and movies as of late. So if you guys have any suggestions for what I should watch to hopefully reignite my fixation for animated content, write them down in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like and subscribe for more content like this. With all that said, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day. See you in the next one.